Ladies and gentlemen, I look at the NBA. I never really looked at it too closely after I stopped several decades ago. I now see that 3 players, Bryant, Garnett, O'Neal, during the course of their careers, will make $300 million. That's just salaries, not endorsements. $300 million. You liberals, pay attention. There are dozens of players in the NBA who make between $100 to $200 million. Right, Oprah? There's scores of players during the course of their career, I'm not even talking about endorsements, who will make $50 to $100 million during the course of their career. And even the bench sitters, for the most part, become multimillionaires. Multimillionaires. These folks, they fly on private jets. They rub shoulders with the high and the mighty in politics and in Hollywood. They're not the top 1%. Ladies and gentlemen, they're the top 1,000th of 1%. Aren't they supposed to be despised? Did the president go on a multi-state tour telling us about inequality? Inequality. Didn't the president attack corporate executives for private jets? If we didn't become successful on our own as a result of our own intelligence and motivation and so forth, then I have to assume these basketball players, or any athletes for that matter, haven't become successful on their own. But I have a number of problems with that. Why should a player earn $300 million a year? Mark, just stick with me. Why should a player earn in a career? Why should a player earn $50 million over the course of a year? Why should a player earn $20 million a year? It's not fair. What are they going to do with all that money? What are they going to do with all that money? Right? Even more than that. So many levels it's unequal, ladies and gentlemen. Why should a guy who's 6'8" make more than a guy who's 4'8"? Why should a guy who runs fast make more than a guy who doesn't run fast? Why should there be merit in competition? What we need here, ladies and gentlemen, is redistribution of wealth. Why is it that we nationalize the healthcare industry? Why is it that we attack every industry, one after another, condemning private economic activity, condemning wealth creation, condemning success, condemning millionaires and billionaires, but somehow the NBA goes untouched? Why is that? On any given day or night when one team is playing another, there are more millionaires and billionaires in that room, the arena, than anywhere else. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Meanwhile, what about the fans? Aren't the fans being ripped off? Why should the fans be paying $6 or $7 for a hot dog that in wholesale is 25 cents? Why should they pay $5 for a pretzel when you get 6 of them at the store for $3.99? Why should they pay $7 for a bag of popcorn, which costs 50 cents? I'm not done. Because I have my solution to what should happen to the NBA. So the players, all of them are multimillionaires. Some of them are super rich. Of course, the owners are billionaires. The managers, the coaches, all multimillionaires. While they're ripping off the fans, the cost of the seats, the closer you get to the court to watch the multimillionaires play for the billionaires, for so many people in our society is prohibitive. Poor people and minorities in particular. Have you ever watched a basketball game, if not in person, on TV, of course? Look at the first 20 or 30 rows. What do you see? Mostly wealthy people, or lower upper middle class or upper middle class people, right? Who's sitting in the bleachers? Mostly poor minorities. Mostly poor minorities. We're being told if you want a hot dog during the course of a game, you have to cough up $5 or $6. You want a cold beer, you have to cough up $5 or $6. You want a bag of popcorn for your kid, you have to cough up $5 or $6. To pay whom for what? To pay the millionaire players and the billionaire owners. Well, we can't have that in this country. Everybody should have access to a basketball arena. It's one of our national pastimes. It's in the public interest. It's for the public good. Why should it be limited to such a few? Well, I don't think it should be. So how do we make this affordable? Okay, here's what we do. It's the National Basketball Association. Okay, we nationalize it. Just like the healthcare industry. Why not? If we can nationalize our most essential requirement, healthcare, where the government can dictate what kind of healthcare we can have, what kind of prescriptions we can get, what kind of policy we can have, which doctor we can go to, what hospital we can go to, and everything in between. If the government can do that, well, then why should the NBA be excluded for such important, equitable treatment? After all, it's just a basketball game. And if the government has the power to take over one industry or another, it certainly would have the power to take over the NBA. Private property rights be damned. Contracts be damned. And it should set prices on food the way it sets prices on health care. Price controls. Why should hot dogs be $5 when it costs the owners and so forth 25 cents a piece? So the federal government should set a price limit. $1 a hot dog. That's it. Equality. Spread the wealth. That's fair. That's fair. Now, what about the players, you say? If it's $1 a hot dog and $1 for a bag of popcorn and $1 for a soft pretzel and $1 for a Coke and maybe $2 for a beer, how are we going to pay these multimillionaire basketball players? Well, we'll pay them. We just won't pay them millions. What do they need with all this money? What are they doing with all this money? Isn't 3 or 4 cars enough? 2 or 3 homes enough? I mean, if we control oil companies and we can control steel companies, we can control healthcare, we can control this. Well, why leave basketball untouched? No player, in my view, should earn more than the President of the United States. The President gets $400,000 a year, thereabouts. My memory, maybe I'm off. Why does any individual need more than $400,000 to live? And besides, basketball isn't a full-year profession. 2-3 months of the year, they can do something else. They have endorsements. They can go on ESPN. There's other ways they can make money. But why should the fans be subsidizing millionaires and billionaires? Particularly poor fans and often minorities who have to sit in the bleachers with binoculars to watch these millionaires play basketball. And this can apply to any sport. I would also set a federal limit of $20 a seat. $20 a seat, no matter where the seat is. And the way you would get a seat is we'd spend $400, $500, $600 million on a website. And we can do it through a lottery process, but there'd be a limit. 1 game every 5 years. I mean, these arenas can only fit 15, 20, 22,000 people. There's a lot of people in this country who want to watch basketball. Everybody should have a chance to watch a basketball game at a reasonable price and a reasonable price for refreshments. It's only fair. And there's no reason these basketball players should be earning tens of millions of dollars during the course of their careers. No reason whatsoever. They don't need it. Also, we would need federal monitors in the locker rooms, at the practices, and at the games to make sure there's no hate speech. I mean, you think there's hate speech on radio. You ought to hear these locker rooms. Oh, my God! You ought to hear them on the courts, on the ice, on the football field, on the baseball diamond. You should hear these athletes, what they say. Hate speech, left and right. Well, we can't have that. I assume Senator Markey would agree with me. Communist Massachusetts. So we need federal monitors in the locker rooms, at the practices, and the games, just to make sure these players understand. I heard the NBA commissioner say it himself. Racism, and that's a broad term. Could be misogyny, could be attacks on gays and so on. This is not going to be tolerated in the NBA. Not in the federal government NBA. No more hate speech. And by the way, hate speech, we mean offensive tattoos, provocative clothing. You know, like in the public schools, you go in with an NRA shirt. Oh, you're suspended. You know, same thing. Same thing. Liberal rules need to apply to everybody. Redistribution of wealth needs to apply to everybody. No industry, no profession should be accepted. If it's good enough for life and death health care, well, it's certainly good enough for basketball and other sports, isn't it? In fact, there's no reason that these sports players, these athletes, should have a separate health care system. They should all be forced into the Obamacare system. Because nobody should get better health care than anybody else. Period. Now, maybe they can have the bronze, maybe the silver, maybe the gold. Maybe we'll be that beneficent and give them a choice. But that's that. That's that. They shouldn't be better than anybody else. Why? Because they're great physical specimens? Because they entertain? Well, so what? A human being is a human being. And one other thing. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about the racial makeup of various sports? We would not tolerate this in any other walk of life. No major business, not in our public places, police stations, firefighters, public schools, IBM, AT&T, United Airlines, you name it. We cannot have sports, which is a business after all. A business, a big business, multi-billion-dollar business. Exempt, can we? From all these other laws coughed out by the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, by the Labor Department, by this, that, and the other. And besides, it's unfair. It's terribly unfair. So I would call on the EEOC, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division of the Labor Department, the Civil Rights Division of the Education Department, all the other civil rights divisions throughout the federal government. And I'd take a very serious look at this. Because it's unfair. It's unfair. Just because you're born, your ancestors are in a different part of the world, just because you're different in some way, doesn't mean you shouldn't be a professional athlete too, whatever the sport is. So we'll want to look at that too. Ownership too. ownership too. Shouldn't be all white guys. Fine, we can take care of that too. My point is, why is the NBA exempt from all of this? From all the rules and regulations and conditions and laws that apply to so much of the rest of society. I just think if this country's gone to hell as a leftist utopia, well then, we can't leave any profession or business alone. They all have to change. And there's no reason that basketball or the other sports should have a privileged position in our society, in my humble opinion. So I'd be very interested in knowing what the head of the Professional Basketball Players Union or the other unions think, for that matter. Oh, I would. I'd like to know what the players think about all of this. I would. All the libs out there. All the phony liberal front groups like Media Matters, the criminal front group funded by George Soros. How that escapes the IRS's review, I will have no idea. But if we believe in radical egalitarianism, if we believe in social justice, if we believe in all these things, redistribution of wealth, price fixing, salary limits, wealth limits, that success is not an individual endeavor. I mean, who built the basketball court after all? Who mows the football field after all, and the baseball diamond? Who runs the Zambonis on the ice in the hockey leagues? These players, they're not successful because they are who they are. They're successful because of roads, because of basketball courts and stadiums and arenas and ice and grass and all the rest. Who the hell do they think built that? You and I, we built that. They're successful because of us. Anyway, that's my suggestion. Oh, and I forgot one thing. For people who want to buy beer at the basketball games, no photo IDs. We all know that's discriminatory. We heard a left-wing federal judge say it. Obama has said it. Holder has said it. The ACLU has said it. So no photo IDs for the purchase of beer at these sporting events either. Now, let me just put it to you this way. I think I'm going to sum this up for the vast majority of the American people, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity. We are sick and tired of these prima donnas, whether they're the owners in this NBA, whether it's the players, whether it's the all-important, self-important ESPN and Fox commentators in sports, Fox 1, who think this is the biggest thing facing the country. It's not. Where millionaires are fighting billionaires and billionaires are fighting billionaires. In all of our lives, it is utterly meaningless. It's utterly meaningless. We have an economy that grew at 0.1%. Do you know what that means? It means we're heading for another recession if things don't turn around. And I've argued that we've never gotten out of the last one because they play with the figures. But do you know what this means? It means people can't find jobs while these a-hole millionaires are fighting with each other. They're so offended. They're all offended with each other. They've never heard such outrageous things in the locker room. There are a-holes in this world. There are racists in this world. Some of them are billionaires. Some of them are homeless people. Some of them are middle class. Some of them are in cities. Some of them are in suburbs. They're all over the damn place. And you live your life and you muscle through and you move on. The whole world has to stop. The whole world has to stop and listen to Oprah Winfrey. The whole world has to stop and listen to this NBA commissioner. And Magic Johnson and the next one and the next. Who cares? Day after day, the same damn thing. We can't secure our borders. The Federal Reserve is going nuts with printing money that's going to affect this society for decades to come. We have a debt that threatens to destroy our economy and destroy our country. We have a president and administration that covered up an attack, murder of 4 American citizens. We have an IRS that has been politicized every bit as much as the Soviet Union system was politicized, going after individuals because of their political beliefs. We have a country where the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment are all under attack by the government. 25% of college grads can't find jobs. Over 10 million people on Social Security disability. Over 40 million people on food stamps. There's another report here today. China this year, communist China. Its economy is going to be bigger than ours. And as the Financial Times reported, not since 1872 when the United States passed Britain has the United States ever been second to anybody. Our country's being hollowed out. Our military's being hollowed out. NASA's being hollowed out. And I'm supposed to sit here, and we are supposed to sit here and get sucked into this because some jackass owner offended Magic Johnson. The millionaire players get together and threaten the billionaire owners. And here's the truth. It's the fans who are being abused. It's the fans who are being abused with these ridiculous salaries, these ridiculous ticket prices, and these ridiculous food prices. Obviously, I was tongue-in-cheek. I don't want the government anywhere near this. But the point is, most of those owners are liberals. Most of those players are liberals. Most of those coaches are liberals. Most of the sportscasters covering it are liberals. Why don't they want the government running everything? Don't they believe in equality and justice and fairness?